Hi, I'm Michelle Chalfant, psychotherapist, holistic life coach, and human just like you, learning to navigate life's challenges. With over 25 years experience, I teach people how to get healthy using the adult chair model. The adult chair model is where simple psychology meets grounded spirituality, and it teaches us how to become healthy adults. From anxiety and depression to codependency and relationship issues, you can use the adult chair for just about anything. Each week, I share practical tips, tools, and advice from myself and a wide range of experts on how to get unstuck, how to live authentically, and how to truly love yourself, all while sitting in your adult chair. Welcome to the Adult Chair Podcast. So welcome to the Adult Chair Podcast again, Terri Cole.
Well, thanks for having me, Michelle.
Yes, ma'am. I was just looking and you were one of the first shows that I did in 2019. And we did a show called Love and Boundaries. It's podcast number 140 for anyone that wants to go back and check it out. But it's been 3 years. I was like, oh my gosh. Wow. I know. I'm like, it does not feel like 3 years, but thank you again. Thanks for joining us again.
It's an honor and a privilege.
The boundary boss is on with us. I love it, especially getting ready for, in February, it's so much talk about relationships. And I think I like to highlight and I know it's typically romantic relationships, but let's talk about boundaries with every kind of relationship because we need them.
We do. And the first question, well, two things. One is, why don't we have them? Why don't we know how to do it? Why is it so hard? Why is it just inherently so complicated? And part of that is it's the way that we were raised. So we all have this downloaded boundary blueprint in our unconscious mind. And who wasn't raised to be a good girl, to be nice, to be thoughtful, to be giving, to be sacrificing? I mean, I don't know, man, but I haven't met anyone, particularly people who are raised as women, who don't raise their hand when I say, were you raised to be a good girl? And was that synonymous with don't make waves? Don't stir the pot. Don't be a troublemaker. Don't be hysterical. Don't be bitchy. There's so many things that go along with that. But so much of this is in the unconscious mind. So much of the work in my courses and in the book, Boundary Boss, is really about going into the basement of your mind and opening up those boxes and understanding why you are the way you are. Like literally nothing's wrong with you. Expecting to be fluent in the language of boundaries when nobody taught you. That's like expecting to be fluent in French because you really want to be. Like it's something you must learn. And you're not alone if you're listening to this and saying, oh, my boundaries are terrible, because nobody taught any of us how to do it. You don't learn it in school. Hence why I wrote a whole friggin' book on it, because my clients were all like, help, I don't know what to do. So let's move into, what does it mean? Like, what are good boundaries? What does that actually mean? And the way that I look at it, it's your own personal rules of engagement. It literally lets other people know what's okay and what's not okay with you. But there's categories of boundaries, meaning, we have physical boundaries, emotional boundaries, mental boundaries, material boundaries, right? Sexual boundaries. So those are the categories of boundaries. But then within ourselves, right, we have to look at the way that I break it down, because not all boundaries are the same. We have preferences, desires, limits, and deal breakers. So there's like a gradation of boundaries, because a deal breaker, right? Something that's a non-negotiable for you. So let's say dating someone with an addiction issue, let's just say, for someone that might be a non-negotiable, especially if that was for me, because I had my own addiction issue. I was like, listen, there's not enough room in this relationship for two addicts in recovery. There can only be one.
Right.
But that would be a deal breaker where it's very personal to me, as are all of our boundaries are incredibly unique. So the important thing is to make sure that what we are asserting are our own boundaries, right? You have every right to have your deal breakers that are just Michelle's deal breakers, that are the things you do or don't want in your life. And I think that when we go through like emotional boundaries, if someone is trying to tell you the way you feel is stupid, or like that's ridiculous, that you don't want to date someone who's in recovery, let's just say,
Yeah.
that is an emotional boundary violation,
Mhm.
because it's not for anyone to tell me what my boundaries are, right? So
Mhm.
anyway,
Love that.
yes. Where do we want to go from here? There's so
I
many
never thought
places.
about so many different kinds of boundaries. I liked what you just said. I mean, so many. I just think about a boundary as a boundary, but so many different types of boundaries. What the heck is going on with humans that we're afraid? I mean, I get that that's the childhood programming, but do we not feel worthy? Like, what is it inside of us that says, no. I think about some clients that I've had. I'm like, okay, your mother's coming over. You don't want her to come over without calling first. Now you have a family and children and all this. Why don't you set a boundary with her and just share with her? Can you just call first? Oh my God. Like, what? No, I could never
Yep.
say that to my, what? Like, why
Right.
is that so hard? It's a simple request to just call
Mhm.
first. Can't do it. What's
Yep.
happening? What happens inside of us?
Well, so much of it is about A, being codependent, B,
Yeah.
being afraid of rejection, afraid of judgment. And when you think about it from a visceral, sort of primal point of view,
Mhm.
it's we're afraid that we're going to be like kicked out of the
The
gang,
tribe.
right? The
Yeah.
tribe, the
Yeah.
group,
Yeah.
where we're, in primal life, that could mean death.
Mm.
So, and in a way, emotionally, especially if you have massive fear of confrontation, um, it can be where we are. I mean, I always say that we're raised and praised, most of us, for being self-abandoning codependents,
Mm. Yeah.
and so that's
Wow.
what that is, right? We would rather self-abandon that client who's like, oh, forget it, she's
Mhm.
coming and she didn't call and I'm not going to say anything.
Yeah.
There's that moment of self-abandonment
Mhm.
where choosing, quote unquote, the peace externally. Cheryl Richardson has a great quote that like not saying anything to keep the peace starts a war inside of you.
Ooh, that's powerful. I love that. It's so true because we feel bad when we don't speak up. But then again, I know a lot of people that just numb out the feeling bad just again to keep the peace. It's like, got to keep the peace, got to keep the peace, got to do that.
Right.
Um, so how do we, if I'm sure there are many people listening to this going, that's me. What would you say to these people? Like, what are some steps to really recovering from this self-abandonment?
Well, start with, I mean, I think the easiest place to start, if you feel like your boundaries are too porous, right, too malleable,
Mhm.
is to stop the insta yes. Right. That's a place. If someone's like, oh, hey, can you help with whatever? And you're instantly like,
Mhm.
okay, yes, yes, yes. So I have my
Mm.
clients go through this process, and I share it in the book as well, of we just start stopping the insta yes. We take 7 days and we don't agree to anything immediately. We start getting comfortable saying, oh, hey, I need to check my calendar, or I need to check with my partner or my roommate or my sister or whomever.
Mhm.
um, I'll get back to you, so
Mm.
that we're buying time, because it is so much easier to say no when you haven't already said yes. And
Mm.
what, right?
Mm.
And
Oh
when as it's
yeah, it's so
happening,
good because then you want to, if you say yes, a lot of us go, oh yeah, of course. Then we have to backpedal. We don't want to lie, but how do we get out of it kind of
but
thing?
we
Yeah,
do,
so
we
true.
will
So
lie.
true.
We
Totally.
will lie. We will
Yeah.
suddenly have a migraine that morning,
Yep. Yep. Yep.
because sometimes you can't even make yourself, like, you will agree to something and be like, I literally cannot even force myself to do this, because that's how
So
much I don't
true.
want to do it.
So true.
And really shifting the mindset to that you have a right to say no. And I, at the front of the
Mhm.
book, the first thing I have in the book, it's called the Boundary Boss Bill of Rights. And if you don't mind, Michelle, let's quickly go over them, because
Yeah,
I
do.
wanted to start the book in a place where we were all sort of on the same page, because so many people would write into me and say, I don't know if what I want is reasonable. I don't know if what I'm feeling is right. I feel like maybe I'm being ridiculous or hysterical or whatever. So I wrote this. We start with, you have the right to say no or yes to others without feeling guilty. And that's a major one where a lot of times we do feel guilty. You have a right to make mistakes, to course correct, or to change your mind, which is another major one that for years I never allowed myself. I mean, my word was my bond. Even if I knew I'd made a mistake, I would just be going to the end of that road. And it is so much healthier to give yourself permission to course correct. Sometimes we make mistakes and you're allowed to change your mind. That can be life-changing right there. You have a right to negotiate for your preferences, your desires, and your needs. And now that isn't just communicating your preferences, your desires, and your needs. I intentionally use the word negotiate because I find so many of my clients, they just can't. If there's any resistance, they're like, okay, we'll do it your way. It's fine. Negotiate, like go for it. It's okay. If your person is like, hey, I really want to have pizza tonight, and maybe you really don't want to have pizza, instead of just going the path of least resistance. Because here's the thing, you guys, those things create it accumulates the resentment we have of these small and big ways that we self-abandon. And it's not to say that you can't go, okay, you order pizza, I'm going to have Chinese food, and then we'll meet in the middle and still eat together. We can always come up with some kind of compromise. But what I find with women in particular who have boundaries that are too porous, they have the disease to please, external validation, want to keep the peace, don't want any confrontation, don't want any problems, just want to keep the ship running, is that we're too readily willing to give up what we want to quote unquote keep the peace. But the thing is, it won't be peaceful because eventually we become really resentful. So learning to actually negotiate for what you want is a skill, and it lets the people in your life know who you are. Because if we're saying yes when we really want to say no a lot, do the people in our life actually know who we are authentically or intimately? And here's the thing, think about it. Is it really nice to say yes when you want to say no and then end up resentful as hell?
No.
Not nice.
Not nice. Not
Nope.
nice. Oh my gosh. Yeah, go. Oh, these are so good, Terri. I love them.
Well,
Yeah, go ahead.
The next one, you have the right to express and honor all of your feelings if you so choose. So here's the thing. You don't have to confess your feelings. No one has a right to be like, well, I need to know all of your feelings. No, you have a right to share it with people who are safe. You know what I mean? Like, not with everybody is my thought. You have a right to voice your opinion, even if others disagree. And again, doesn't mean you have to, but you have a right to. You have a right to be treated with respect, consideration, and care. And that really starts with you treating yourself with respect, consideration, and care, which means we can't be self-abandoning all day long and treat ourselves with respect, consideration, and care. Because here's the thing, if you think about it, the way that we relate to ourselves, our relationship with ourselves, sets the bar for every other relationship in our lives. If we treat ourselves like crap, if we're last on our own list, if we don't rest when we're tired, if we say yes to things even though we're stretched to our limit, we will inevitably attract people who agree with that low self-assessment, and they will expect you to continue doing all the things, even though you really can't keep doing all the things. So it starts with you treating yourself with respect, consideration, and care. You have a right to determine who has the privilege of being in your life.
I love that. The privilege of being in your life. I'm hearing like so much permission of self and just looking at self and saying, you have the right, you have the choice. Can you give yourself this permission? It's like, ooh, it's powerful. Like to claim that for yourself,
Yes.
like beautiful.
Oh,
Beautiful.
thanks. with the who gets to be in your amazing life, I look at it like a VIP, like you have a VIP section in your life. But what most people don't realize is that you make the guest list. You are the only bouncer. You put up the velvet rope or you don't. So if you don't realize that not everyone in the world should really be in your VIP section, even if they feel entitled. If like your third cousin wants to come to your bachelorette party, but you can't stand her, and your mother's like, just invite her because everyone's going to be mad if you don't, right? That's something that should be sacred to you. And it's the truth about the way that you feel. So again, it doesn't mean we're going to excommunicate everyone in our life. It just means that there's the VIP section of your life. It's got to be people where there's mutuality, where they fill up your cup and you fill up their cup. Not all these obligatory relationships. And I can tell you, if you're wondering what relationships are obligatory, how about let's do a resentment inventory, and that will tell you right now where you need boundaries, really, because we all know who we feel resentful towards at any given time. All right, next. You have the right to communicate your boundaries, your limits, and your deal breakers. You have the right to prioritize your self-care without feeling selfish. Which I find with my therapy clients, it's a really hard one where
it's so hard. Yeah. Like a flood of people just came into my mind. Like, oh yeah. Like, isn't self-care selfish? No, it's self-loving. No.
Yeah. And you're the only, here's the thing, you're the only one who can do it. And so much of the time, if we are seeking for something else, someone else to fill that space inside that only self-love can fill, like there's not enough overworking or overgiving or being a hero to others or whatever that will fill that place. Like there's a particular space inside that actually only self-love can fill. And that is, in my estimation, it's not a feeling, right? This isn't a feeling. This is a way of life. Self-love and holding yourself in high regard. It isn't like just looking in the mirror and saying, I love you. It's literally having boundaries. It's not having toxic people in your life. It's not putting up with shit. It's actually a way of living. Well, it's like living like a boundary boss, according to me.
Yeah.
Where you value this is not a dress rehearsal, people. Like, we're live right now. Right. This is it. Right now. I hate to quote Cher, but I will, because she said that, and it's true. Yeah. That this time around, this is your one and only amazing, one of a kind life. There's never been another you before. There will never be another you, DNA wise. It's a fact. Yeah. So when our whole thing is about not rocking the boat, you spend your whole life appeasing like Bob in accounting. And on your deathbed, you're not going to be like, wow, I wish I appeased Bob in accounting more. Like, you're definitely not. Or I wish I said yes more when I really wanted to say no. I wish I bent over backwards for people I don't even give a crap about more. You're not going to think that. Right. So living authentically, to me, really means knowing your boundaries and being able to establish them and having the language of boundaries. And in the book, I did a whole entire chapter on just scripts, because I think that is something that gets in the way. Yeah. I would have clients who would be right there. Like I was standing right there. I was going to say something. And then they're like, but then just no words. Know what to say. Yeah. Right. And, you get tongue tied, because it's also can be scary, but just like anything, the more you do it, the easier it gets, the better you get at it. And then I'll have clients, it always makes me so happy when they get to this point where they're like, oh my God, you're not going to believe it. Of course, I'm always going to believe it. They're like, it just spontaneously flew out of my mouth. And I'm like, that's when we know it is integrated, because all of the forethought, when you first learn the language of boundaries, we think about it. Sometimes we might practice it with a friend. We practice it in the mirror. We're like, Here's the thing. Once you start doing it, it feels so good to be known. It feels so good to be accurately seen that you can never go back. it's like this kind of transformation that you couldn't go back if you wanted to, because you would never fit in that little box that you used to live in, because it just feels so good to be yourself and to celebrate being yourself and the uniqueness that is you, rather than comparing and despairing and all of that, you know?
I love that. It's almost like you have a taste of this true, authentic self, and you don't want to go back. But so many people are afraid. Well, if I do that, if I set that boundary, I don't know what's over here. Over here is freaking amazing. Like, come over here, come through the doors, the doorway of setting a boundary. I can already hear people asking this question. I can feel their thoughts. What do you do when you set a boundary and you get rejected
Mhm,
and you get pushback and you get,
mhm.
all of that kind of thing? What do you say to that?
Well, in the book and in my courses, I teach you how to create a proactive boundary success plan.
Mm-hmm.
So most of the time, we know the players, right? If it's
Mm-hmm.
people who've already been in our life, like long-term relationships,
Mm-hmm.
we're pretty sure about who's going to like super not love there being a new boundary sheriff in town.
Right.
So we expect pushback.
Yeah.
We expect someone to perhaps feel threatened, or to say, well, I don't know why, you're being this way, or you're being so selfish suddenly, or whatever.
Yeah.
And you can learn to just stand your ground and say, hey, I see that you're upset, and I'm sorry that you're upset, yet this is an important boundary for me, and I still can't come to the event that you invited me to, Mom. I love you, and I'm sorry that you're upset.
Mm.
We can stay lovingly attached
Yeah.
to the people in our lives while we set boundaries. Part of the process
Mm.
is doing it with a neutral, right? We get really good at not going into the situation supercharged. Stop
Mhm.
anticipating what the other person's going to do, besides knowing that there
Mhm.
will most likely be some pushback.
Yeah.
And you will go through this phase where, in the beginning, when you start to set boundaries, you really want to take them back. Like you really do. You say it, and then you literally want to call the person back and be like, all right, forget it, it's fine,
Yeah.
don't
I'm
worry, I'll
taking
do
it
it, it's
back.
okay.
Cancel.
So I have
Yeah.
a 48-hour rule where you're not going to take back anything.
Mhm.
And by the end of that 48 hours, you're not going to want to. So you're going to anticipate, because I walk you through it in the book and when I'm teaching it,
Mhm.
that you're going to feel afraid, afraid of losing the person, afraid of, falling out of, the high position that you had in their life, afraid of all the things.
Yeah.
And yet, the thing that you don't understand right now that you're gaining, like Michelle said, come over here, it's awesome,
Yeah.
is that you gain this sense of liberation and this sense of true, authentic empowerment,
Mm.
simply by standing up for yourself in a way that it's not crushing other people. It's not being mean. You're
Mhm.
not being bitchy. And it doesn't have to be that way. We can always set boundaries with love and kindness, and a little more heat if we need to. It doesn't
Mhm.
have to be love and kindness, depending on who you're talking to. But like, I think that part of the myths is that boundaries push people away. It
Yeah.
means I'm being selfish. It means that, it requires me to be mean if I'm
Mhm.
going to set boundaries, or that boundary, it requires too much time and energy. I'm like, "Pfft, how much time and energy is sucked out of your life for the dysfunctional boundaries you have? Trust
Yeah.
me, this takes much less time
Yeah.
than that." And I think that there's an illusion, or this misperception, that if you have good boundaries, you're constantly saying no and rejecting people. That's not it at all. It really is about, the subtitle of the book is about talking true, right?
Mm.
And that's what it's about, is learning how to talk true, be seen, and finally live free,
Mm.
because that is what it creates for
Mhm.
you. And here's the thing: we can't expect other people to do it for us, because they can't.
No.
So much of the time we're like, oh, Betty in my office, she's a boundary bully, blah, blah, blah. And I
Yeah.
would say to my clients, so have you said something to Betty?
No.
No. Well, okay. Well, how about we talk to her
Yeah.
and say something, even if it's like, oh, hey, Betty, I noticed in the Wednesday meeting that you were talking while I was trying to give my presentation, and I found it really distracting. So I'd like to make a simple request that you not do that, because in this project, we're going to have a lot of meetings. So can you please be aware of that?
Yeah.
What's Betty
Beautiful.
going to do? She's going to take away your birthday? I mean, come
Yeah.
on. Like what
She'll
is
be
she going to
mad and
do?
say, I wasn't talking.
You can say,
The
oh, well,
boundary deniers, those people
yeah,
that go, no, I didn't do that. This
right.
is your problem. That wasn't me.
No, it definitely was, Betty. I saw you. But
Yeah.
anyway, and here's the thing. You could say, oh, okay, well, I thought it was you. And you
Yeah.
could, here's
Because
the
she
thing
knows
about,
down deep inside it was her.
she
Right.
does.
Yeah.
And I believe she probably won't talk during your presentation in the next meeting. But
Yeah.
again, all of this is, we're presenting this in a very matter of fact
Mhm.
way, a
Yeah.
neutral way, which is why we
Yes.
do so much pre-work
Mhm.
before we get to actual boundary setting, because we have to understand. I mean, the actual boundary setting doesn't come till way later in the book for a specific reason, because we're going through all of the emotional machinations and why I feel this way and what does this remind me of. And, I have the 3 cues for clarity, like to be able to identify
Mhm.
when you're having a transference, which, you're having an amplified response to
Mhm.
something,
Mhm.
and really going, who does this person remind me of? Where have I felt like this before? How is this behavioral dynamic, like the dance we're doing? How is this boundary dance familiar to me? And then you go, oh my God, Bob in accounting reminds me
Yeah.
of my punitive father.
Yeah.
Holy crap. I'm reacting to Bob like he's my father. Okay, let's back it up. And these are all of there's a whole bunch of psychological tools and strategies within the book, because it isn't just about boundaries. There's a million reasons why we have struggled all of our lives to set them. Really good reasons, right? So it isn't like you're weak or there's something wrong with you. So much of it is what we learned. This is
Yeah.
modeled behavior from
Or
our
didn't,
parents.
excuse me, or didn't learn.
Exactly.
Right. That's
Yes.
such good stuff. What about what happens when I set a boundary and there's a boundary violator, like they just don't listen?
Mhm.
I keep setting, the boundary. I told you not to talk to me like that. Told you not to talk to me like that. Uncle
Yep.
Joe, I told you, Uncle Joe, and
Yep.
Uncle Joe's still talking to me like that. What do you say to that?
Well, there's 2 versions of this in that the way that I teach it. You have boundary bullies, who are people that you set the boundary and they stomp over it again and again. Um, but then there's boundary destroyers, people who are really toxic personalities.
Yeah.
So if, would you say Uncle Bob? If Uncle Bob,
Uncle Joe, Uncle
Uncle
Joe.
Joe, I'm always like, Bob and Betty are always my examples. So if Uncle Joe, I think you have to make decisions, right? We take into
Yeah.
consideration, how often do we see Uncle Joe?
Yeah.
Is he in his right mind? Is he a drunk? What's the deal? Like,
Yeah.
why is he being this way? Can we avoid Uncle Joe at the parties because he's talking a certain way? Maybe he hate speech, or maybe he's racist, or whatever it is we're dealing with Uncle
Right.
Joe. Maybe I'm
Right.
projecting my own family, but in the meantime, I say, if you can avoid Uncle Joe, because it really is just, you see him once a year, then avoid him. But for people who are more like boundary destroyers in your life, I have a whole chapter 10, I believe it is in the book, about boundary destroyers, which are people who are real emotional manipulators. And I
Yeah.
go through a whole entire plethora of tactics that they may use on you
Mhm.
to take your boundaries away, to erase your boundaries, to trample on your boundaries. And, it depends on why, right? This could be any of the cluster B personality disorders, perhaps. So, narcissistic personality disorder, histrionic, bipolar. I mean, if someone has a real mental health um, challenge or struggle, they could fall into this category. But we're really not diagnosing anyone, because
Yeah.
when you read the examples in the book, if someone is gaslighting you, if
Mm.
someone is love bombing you, if someone is denying your reality, if someone is acting that they're worried about you, but really it's a way of undermining you by saying, are you okay? You know,
Mm,
I'm really worried about
yeah.
you. You seem like you're going off the rails kind of. I'm concerned, but they're really not concerned. It's a manipulation tactic to make you doubt what you're saying. So
Mm,
I think each situation is very unique to itself, but you know the difference. You know the difference between an Uncle Joe and someone who is systematically denying your reality.
yeah.
And those are really are people that we need to put distance between ourselves. I mean, I talk about repeat offenders in the book, and you know, what do we do? So if it's a regular repeat offender and not someone who has a narcissistic personality disorder, then
Mhm.
we have to attach a consequence,
Yeah.
right? Because with a repeat offender, if you're not going to have the same conversation, be stuck in Groundhog Day over and over again if it's
Mhm.
not landing with the person.
Mhm.
So then you have to, and it could be something simple. Let's say that your partner is being late to come home for dinner and you happen to be cooking, and you say, hey, if you're going to be more than 10 minutes late, let me know so the food doesn't get cold. But they keep not doing that.
Mm,
Then an appropriate consequence would be to say, hey, I'm not waiting for you for dinner. If you don't let me know, I'm eating at 6 o'clock when we
yeah.
plan to, and you can heat up your own food when you get home. And that may not seem like a big deal, but when you have rituals within a couple,
Mhm.
it is a consequence. That person will feel that. And we have to do the thing we say we're going to do, though, if they continue to trample on
Yes.
the boundary, right?
Yes. Yeah. A lot of
We
people
can't
don't.
just threaten.
They'll threaten, then they don't follow through. Yeah. A lot
That's
of
why
people have that.
it's really important that what we choose to say, you know, what we choose as a consequence is something that's appropriate, that it doesn't have to be extreme. It's just something that lets the person know that you're serious.
Mhm.
Um, so that's an example of a
Yeah.
consequence, but that is the next thing that we do a lot of times. when
Mhm.
you when you say to someone who you haven't told, right, you have this problem, this issue, you'd like this, you have a preference, you tell them your preference, or that you didn't like something they did, you would be shocked at how many people go, oh my god, thank you so much
Yeah.
for
I had no
being a good enough
idea.
friend. Yeah,
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
I feel super loved when people tell me the truth about how they feel. Whether it's people who work for me know this too. Like, I'm not someone who needs to be managed. I want to know the truth about what you think about something. If I respect your opinion, if I'm asking you, don't just tell me what you think. I want to hear it, because you will then be fired, because that doesn't help me at all.
Yeah.
But in my friendships and with my husband, I really want to know how the people in my life feel. And I remember years ago saying to Vic, we've been together about 25 years, and I remember saying to him, hey, you know, if there's anything that I'm doing that's annoying you or bothering you, I want you to tell me, because it might be something I could change. So whenever I used to bring it up in the early days, he
Mhm.
would say, nothing, something wrong? Like, what's wrong? Like, why are you
Yeah.
saying
Why
that? I
would
was
you
like,
say that?
I was like,
Trying
no,
to be
no.
healthy? I don't know.
I was like, babe, nothing's wrong. I literally, specifically and accurately want to know how you feel about things. And he's like, finally, one time he was like, well, you know, like when you wash your hair, sometimes that hair gets stuck in the drain. Can you take it out when you wash your hair? I was like,
Sure.
sure. And in 25 years, I've never literally washed my hair and not cleaned the drain. And I always think of him when I do that.
Yeah.
These are small ways. And trust me, I mean, he's happy to tell me all the things now, 25 years later.
but
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 those,
but but
yeah,
he loves I was just gonna say, what I hear with that relationship is that you love him and you want to respect his boundaries. Like, you want to, because you care about this person. So
yes,
for people listening, that will happen with you as well.
yeah.
Hopefully. I should
Yes,
say.
it does,
I
though,
mean,
because there's mutuality. Because here's the thing, Michelle, you know,
yeah.
people
Yeah.
think that becoming a boundary boss only means learning how to set boundaries.
Mm-mm.
Mm-mm. It also means accepting someone else's boundaries, which is really painful. If you have been a yes person, if
Yeah.
you have had the disease to please, and someone has the nerve to say no to you,
Hmm.
woo! In the
Yeah.
beginning, I used to get
Yeah.
so pissed. I'd be like, who the hell does Betty think she is? All of us do crap we don't want to do all day long.
Yeah.
Why does Betty get out of it? You know?
Yeah. 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 I think I did a whole podcast on that. Like, how do you accept a boundary? Because I say how you have to do it from your adult chair. You've got to get in an adult place or forget it. Like,
Yep.
we're going to deflect and defend and blame. I mean, bad news. This was so great. I'm so excited to read your book. I have to tell you.
Right on.
So tell us, where can people find you? Tell us what's going on with you.
All the things. Well, my website is terricole.com. And I actually have something for your listeners specifically, if they want to go to boundaryboss.me/Michelle. And it's about boundaries and codependency.
That is so good. That is another one of my favorite topics is codependency. Thank you
Yep.
so much for that beautiful offer. Love
You're
it.
welcome.
Love it.
And you
Love
guys
it.
follow me on Instagram. It's just at Terri Cole. That's where I spend a lot of time. And Michelle just was on my show. So the end of February that
Yes.
airs. So that is the Terri Cole Show. I've had a podcast myself since 2015. So those are all the places that you can find me. And this was so fun, Michelle. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you being on today. And yeah, I'll be definitely seeing you again. We need to do this again because boundaries are so, so important. Thank you, Terri.
Right on.